and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another 10 pens currently inked up today. So I think let's just go through these briefly one by one. We'll go through them in a little bit more detail and then we'll do a writing sample. So from left to right we have the Visconti Homo Sapiens London Fog, the Visconti Homo Sapiens Caput Mundi, the Visconti Homo Sapiens Jade, the Visconti Homo Sapiens Midnight in Florence, the Visconti Daedalus, the Visconti Opera Master Luna, the Pilot Custom Urushi Vermilion, the Montegrappa Extra 1930 Shiny Lines Dove, the Armando Simone Club Bologna Extra Green Saft, and then last but not least we have the Armando Simone Club Bologna Extra Blue La Royale. So I think let's go through these in a little bit more detail. This is the beautiful London Fog, and this is a pen that I've had almost from the start of my pen collecting, and I say almost. I started around June in, let me see, I think it was 2016, and this I picked up in September 2016. So I had actually gone through a whole load of pens, very cheap pens, prior to that, and there really wasn't a lot that I liked in terms of writing experience, but also in terms of design. And this was very quickly one of my Grail pens, and I decided that I would, as a one-off, just go and buy this pen and just see if it really appealed to me. And this pen, you can see here with the swirl patterns going on there in the body, which is a little bit muted with ink in there, was one of my Grail pens, and I picked it up and I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it so quickly that I decided that I would go and buy the Florentine Hills as well a few days or a day later. And that arrived a few days after that. But this pen comes with, I'll show you the nib, it's a 23 cat palladium fine nib on that pen. This is the original nib that came with this pen, and I had swapped it out for a stub nib for I think probably about a year and a half, and I was loving the stub nib, but more lately I've been going back to finer nibs, so I have a fine nib on there, and I think probably for about the last year to 18 months I've had a fine nib on there. The next pen is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Caput Mundi. Now there were only 50 of these made, and I have my initials on here, but this is a very nice pen, and although I had actually liked the look of this pen when I bought it, it was a pen that I didn't write a lot with, mostly because I wasn't into red inks at that point in time, and also that this would feather on a lot of paper. And the ink I was using in there at the time was Diamine, and it was Poppy Red. And that, although it's a really lovely red ink, and I also like Wild Strawberry as well, I found that Poppy Red did feather on some wetter border nibs. Now this one does have a medium 23 cat palladium nib there, but it is a very, very wet writer, so I have that inked up with a different red ink, and I've sort of since actually fell back in love with the pen, because probably for about the last 18 months I have been trying different red inks in the pen, and although none of them strike me as much as Poppy Red does from Diamine, I have fell in love with other inks that don't feather, and actually the ink in there I've got at the moment is Pelican Edelstein Garnet, which I do like as well. Then we have this pen that is inked up this week, and this is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Jade, and yes, that's the third Visconti in my pen tray this week. But this is a really lovely pen. I do love the pen a lot. I actually wanted to have a pen, when I started to like the Caput Mundi, I wanted a pen that was similar in sort of like a sort of semi-translucent, sort of mostly opaque body and cap. And the Jade came along, and I wasn't really a fan of this green colour, but to be honest, I have been using it a lot in the last year. So again, I'm a sucker for medium nibs, so this is a Visconti and it's a 23 cat palladium medium nib in there. And the reason why I like these Homo sapiens so much is that they hold 2.5 millilitres of ink, and you can see the ink in the body, and it has a double reservoir there, so you can see the ink there, so you can see how much ink you've got left. And I hate it when I'm writing and a pen starts writing a little bit dry, or in a lot of cases it just starts skipping, and then before you know it, you're out of ink, and it's like, well, I'm pretty sure I had a full pen of ink in here, and when you check, no, it's actually empty. So that's why I like these demonstrators or partial demonstrators, because more so the Homo sapiens, because you can see that level of ink that you've got left in there, and you can top it back up when it's getting a little bit low. The next pen here is the Visconti Homo sapiens, and this is the Midnight in Florence. And I know if you've watched some of my videos, you will have seen me say that I wasn't a fan of this pen, and the reason why is that a lot of the body is obscured by the purple, and likewise when you fill it up with an ink and it's got a purple ink in there, that you're not going to see it much. But you still do get to see these swirls. They're a little bit more muted than, say, the London Fog. And I had the option of actually picking this pen up, and I picked it up for what was, for me, a good price. And I decided that I do like writing with purple inks, and this is a purple pen. So why should I exclude this from my collection just for the sake of that sort of reason of maybe not liking the ink so much, sort of being hidden inside the pen? And that I do love the London Fog, and I have the same issue there. So for me, I decided to pick this one up, and again, this has a 23 cat palladium medium nib on that pen. And it's a pen that I like writing with, so I have that one inked up as well. And then the other pen here I have is the Visconti Daedalus, and this is a really beautiful overlay pen. It's a silver, or sterling silver, or 925 silver, or AUG 925, and it is an overlay. Now, it doesn't have the My Pen finial, but it has the maze on here. Daedalus, as in the Minotaur, and the maze. And you can see, obviously, the maze is really adorned throughout this pen. It's a beautiful pen, but you'll also see that this has, in that blue resin, it has some silver dust, and that is actual real silver. So, for me, I love this pen. It looks heavy. It's not a heavy pen. But the cap is, I guess, a little bit more weightier, I guess. Now, I also have a medium 23 cat palladium nib on there. I do like writing with the medium nibs. I do like it because at the end of the day, I can write in a journal or in a notebook or take meeting notes, and I can actually get away with it quite nicely. Obviously on fountain pen friendly paper. Normally I will use Tomoe River or Oxford Optic paper, or sometimes more lately Sylvine paper, because that tends to work. It's a little bit thinner than Oxford Optic paper, not quite as fountain pen friendly, but it's probably 90% of the way there. The next pen I have inked up is the Visconti Opera Master Luna, and this I picked up first before the Daedalus, and probably about 18 months before the Daedalus. This has again that silver dust in the resin there, and this is a really nice pen. I do like the Opera Masters, and I used to write a lot with them. I haven't been writing a lot with them lately. And this has a 1.3mm stub nib on them, and I think maybe that's why I haven't been writing with these lately, because I have been going towards more finer nibs, either mediums or fines, and I think that may be the reason why I just have maybe fallen out of love with these pens a little bit, because the majority of my Opera Masters do have 1.3mm stub nibs on there. But I do like them as well. So I have this one inked up as well for this week. And then I mentioned that I do like obviously fine and medium nibs. And there's this one, and this is the Pilot Custom Urushi. And this is in a vermilion. So yes, it is a ebonite pen with a Urushi lacquer in the vermilion colour. And this really is a beautiful pen. And hopefully you can see that there. It's a really good Pilot Custom Urushi. Now, the reason why I like this pen is that I've been liking fine and medium nibs more lately. This is a number 30 size nib. Most nibs are number 6 or 8. Pilot have their own designation. A size 30 is around about a size 9 or 10 in a regular nib. But this is a massive nib, and this one is a fine medium, and it has a little bit of a bounce to the nib, and I just love how it writes. So I have this one inked up this week as well. And then I have a pen that I like a lot, and this is the Montegrappa Extra 1930 Shiny Lines Dove. Yes, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it has a stunning stacked celluloid there. And this is a beautiful pen. I would like to get more Montegrappas over time. I do find that this doesn't hold as much ink as I would like. I guess I'm a little bit spoilt for choice on these Viscontis because they all hold 2.5 millilitres of ink. This one, because it's a piston, holds around about a milliliter of ink, and I do find it runs out a lot quicker than I expect it to. Maybe I should just be actually refilling the pens more sooner, perhaps. But I love how it writes, and this has a number 8 size Montegrappa Dove nib on there. And that is a number 8 size nib with an ebonite feeder there. But I love the pen. I love it a lot. So I have that one inked up with me this week. I also have this one, and this is an Armando Simone Club. And it's a Bologna Extra, and this is in the green Saft. And this is on loan to me from John at stjohnspens.com. So I have this one inked up, and this is for the review, and this will be going back to John, but this is a beautiful pen. I do like my ASC Bologna Extras, and this one has obviously a number 8 size Magic Flex nib with an ebonite feed on there. There's no nib designation on these, but they are medium nibs, but they tend to write a little bit more like a Western Broad and very, very fire hose wet. And then last but not least, again, another Armando Simone Club pen, and this is the Bologna Extra in the Blue Le Royale, or the Royal Blue. And this is an Omas material, and this pen is also on loan from John at stjohnspens.com for a review. And again, I like these ASC Bologna Extras. This has a number 8 size Magic Flex nib, again a medium nib, writes like a Western Broad because it's a fire hose nib, and it has that ebonite feed there. But again, like, these pens are long, weighty, and I love them in the size of my hand. They feel just very well balanced. They are pneumatic fillers, the ASC Bolognas, but for me this really is a nice sort of size and weight pen. So I have that one inked up with me this week as well. So that's my current ink pens for this week. I think let's now go and do a writing sample. So the first pen is the Visconti Homo Sapiens London Fog. So we'll do an ink swatch here. Now I mentioned that this is a fine nib, so it is putting down a fine line, but it's also a fairly wet writer as well. So this is the Visconti Homo Sapiens London Fog, and it is a fine 23 cat palladium nib. And then the ink in here is Waterman Inspired Blue. Now, I do a lot of time put Pilot Washizuku Konpeki in there, and I would actually say out of the two inks, the Pilot Washizuku Konpeki is actually a more wetter ink, whereas the Waterman Inspired Blue, although great and it's a nice ink, is a slightly more drier ink, so it doesn't write as wet. So if you like blue inks and you've been using Konpeki and you think, well, it's great, but it's a little bit too wet for me, then maybe try Waterman Inspired Blue. And typically Waterman inks are actually quite cheap as well, compared to certainly Pilot Washizuku inks. The next pen is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Caput Mundi. So let's do an ink swatch here. Now, this is a medium nib, so it is putting down a more wider line than what the fine was there. So this is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Caput Mundi, and it is a medium 23 cat palladium nib, and then the ink in here is Pelican Edelstein Garnet. But that is a red ink that I like a lot. Maybe I should try and put Poppy Red from Diamine back in there. The next pen is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Jade. So again, we'll do an ink swatch. And again, this is a medium nib, so it's putting down a more broader line than the fine. So this is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Jade in a medium 23 cat palladium nib, and then the ink in here is Pelican Edelstein Jade. A jade ink for a jade pen. The next pen is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Midnight in Florence. So let's do an ink swatch. Now, this is a medium nib, and it's quite a wet writing nib as well. And as you know, if you watch my videos, you'll know that I like wet writing inks and fire hose nibs. So this is the Visconti Homo Sapiens Midnight in Florence. And it is, again, a medium 23 cat palladium nib. And then the ink in here is KWZ Gummy Berry, which is a beautiful purple ink. And I'd say probably my second best purple ink so far. My number one ink is Diamine Majestic Purple. And then maybe my third best purple ink is Mont Blanc Lavender Purple, I would think. The next pen is the Visconti Daedalus. So we'll do an ink swatch. And this is quite a wet writer. It's a palladium nib, it's a medium nib, but the nib is a little bit more stiffer than, say, the Midnight in Florence. So this is the Visconti Daedalus, and it is a medium 23 cat palladium nib, and then the ink in here is a very wet Visconti blue, which I do love actually that blue ink. And I'm not really partial to blue inks, and I tend to go for more lighter blue, like the Waterman inspired blue, or maybe even the Pilot Washizuku Konpeki. The next pen is the Visconti Opera Master Luna. So we'll do an ink swatch again. Now this is a 1.3mm stub, so you can see it's a very, very broad nib. So it's a Visconti Opera Master, and it's the Luna, and it's a 1.3mm stub nib, and it's a 23 cat palladium nib. And the ink in here is actually the same blue. It's Visconti blue. But you can see a very difference in there, in that colour. So both nibs are very, very wet nibs. This one's probably a little bit more wetter, but you can see that this blue here on the Daedalus is a lot more darker blue than this one. So it just really depends on how much ink a pen is putting down on the page and how wet it is. The next pen is the Pilot Custom Urushi in the Vermilion. So we'll do an ink swatch here. Now this is deemed by Pilot as a fine medium nib, and it is more of a fine line, I would say. It's also a number 30 size nib there, which is around about a number 9 or number 10 size Western nib. So this is the Pilot Custom Urushi Vermilion. Now, I tend to always spell vermilion with 2 L's, but I think the correct spelling is 1 L, so I'll put 1 L here. And it is a fine medium nib, and it is an 18 cat gold nib. And the ink in here is Mont Blanc Corn Poppy Red. But that is a lovely ink and a lovely writing pen as well. The next pen is the Montegrappa Extra 1930 Shiny Lines Dove. So we'll do an ink swatch again. Now this is a medium nib. I do find it tends to write a little bit more on the drier side. So this is the Montegrappa Extra 1930 Shiny Lines Dove, and it's a medium 18 cat gold nib. And then the ink in here is Diamine Earl Grey, which is my favourite grey ink. The next pen is the Armando Simone Club Bologna Extra in the green Saft. So we'll do an ink swatch. Now these typically are fire hose nibs, and you'll just see how that ink comes out of that nib. Very, very wet indeed. And that's just the way that these nibs write. So this is, and I'm going to abbreviate this, the ASC Bologna Extra, and this is the green Saft, and it is a medium 18 cat gold nib. And then the ink in here is Aurora and Klingner, and it's Alt Gold Grun, which is a sort of a greeny goldy sort of ink, more greeny sepia colour, I would say. And then, last but not least, we have the Armando Simone Club Bologna Extra Blue La Royale. And we'll do an ink swatch here. And of course, being another Armando Simone Club, it's actually a very wet writing nib. So again, I'll abbreviate this. So it's an ASC Bologna Extra, and it's Blue La Royale in a medium 18 cat gold nib. And then the ink in here is Akamon Delft's Blur, or Blue, which is a lovely blue ink, washable blue ink. So I think let's go through these pens inked up one more time. We have a Visconti Homo Sapiens London Fog in a fine 23 cat palladium nib inked up with Waterman inspired blue. We have a Visconti Homo Sapiens Caput Mundi in a medium 23 cat palladium nib inked up with Pelican Edelstein Garnet. We have a Visconti Homo Sapiens Jade in a medium 23 cat palladium nib inked up with Pelican Edelstein Jade. We have a Visconti Homo Sapiens Midnight in Florence in a medium 23 cat palladium nib inked up with KWZ Gummy Berry. We have a Visconti Daedalus in a medium 23 cat palladium nib inked up with Visconti Blue. We have a Visconti Opera Master Luna in a 1.3mm stub 23 cat palladium nib inked up with Visconti Blue. We have a Pilot Custom Yorushi in the Vermilion in a fine medium 18 karat gold nib inked up with Mont Blanc Corn Poppy Red. We have a Monte Grappa Extra 1930 Shiny Lines Dove in a medium 18 karat gold nib inked up with Diamine Earl Grey. We have an ASC Bologna Extra Green Saft in a medium 18 karat gold nib inked up with Rohrer and Klinger Alt Goldgrün, and that is starting to feather. And this is Oxford Optic paper. So you can see how wet that nib is, and that's still very wet. And then last but not least, we have an ASC Bologna Extra Blue La Royale in the medium 18 karat gold nib inked up with Akamon Delft's Blur. So there you have it, that's my currently inked pens for this week. Thanks for watching, please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.